Alright, guys, welcome back to Crypto Jiri. Today I'll be talking about the euro crashing as well as the US dollar going to be crashing soon and what's going to be holding up at the end of it. Yes, I already uploaded a video today, but I just wanted to give you guys a prior knowledge of what's actually going on in the markets and the economy. First thing we're going to talk about or look at will be Pomp's podcast with Travis Kling. He is with Ikejia. They're basically a hedge fund that does Bitcoin hedge funding. And he also has years of experience in the hedge fund world, trading equities for large corporations. So he has a big background in finance. So let's take a look on what he says.
Track all these things that have happened, right? So the Fed's expanded their balance sheet by just shy of $3 trillion in the last, less than 90 days. But we were doing QE before anybody ever said coronavirus. The Fed cut rates 3 times before anybody ever said coronavirus. The repo market blew out 5 months before anybody said coronavirus. The Fed funds flipped the overnight offer rate a year ago. A year ago that happened. And so these pieces that were in place, well before any of this coronavirus stuff started happening, and specifically like this dollar shortage situation, which you've had, a few guests on that have talked about it. Brent Johnson with his dollar milkshake theory, Jim Bianco. I call these guys the macro voices cohort. It's the guy that Eric Townsend has all the time, which I've been listening to that podcast religiously. They've done a great job. Luke Grahman goes in that bucket. Danielle DiMartino Booth goes in that bucket. And they all have, a lot of similarities around their viewpoint. But they were talking about how dire this dollar shortage situation was before anybody ever said coronavirus. And then you can just look at the magnitude and the ferociousness with which the Fed and the Treasury reacted when this hit. And that they knew how tight everything was beforehand. And that's how you got a situation where in the second week of March, you had capital markets seize up so much, right? And it's real easy to think about this. If the VIX is going up at the same time that gold is going down, you're having a big problem in a financial market, and it's a Lehman-esque type of problem.
All right, guys. So as you can see, what he's talking about is technically very true. Honestly, it is kind of scary to think about it like that. But let's take a look on what else he says about what's gonna be happening, or for sure in the future, what will happen.
Dollar shortage. The dollar is the world reserve currency. That means a lot of different things, but it means that countries around the world want to transact in dollars, dollar-based transactions, financial contracts, liabilities, financial instruments. You want to do that in dollars because you feel good about the stability of what that's going to be. That creates what is very broadly now been called the euro-dollar market, which is basically all of the dollar-denominated liabilities and financial instruments that exist outside of the United States and thus outside of the direct purview of the Federal Reserve. And when this dollar shortage situation had been, again, going on for a year, close to a year. I mean, I think the macro voices guys would probably tell you it's been going on for like 5 years. If you want to go all the way back to, when, foreign buyers of treasuries stopped becoming net purchasers of treasuries, which I think was in 2014. I know that was a big part of that kind of dollar, how that started. But you fast forward to today and you have a big deleveraging event, a market crash like we had in March, and the whole world was already scrambling, barely getting enough dollars to satisfy these various different, contracts and financial instruments. And then there's this big race for dollars and it's just a vacuum. And the easiest way to think about how big that vacuum was that the Fed and the Treasury and the US government announced north of $7 trillion of monetary and fiscal stimulus from, over about a 6-week period of time in kind of March, April. And the Dixie, the dollar index, which is the US dollar weighted against a basket of international currencies, the Dixie was unchanged over that period of time. So 7 trillion of stimulus. Again, you did like 2 trillion in the financial crisis over a really big, multi-year period of time. And we did 7 trillion in 6 weeks, and nothing happened to the dollar. That's how short the world was dollars. And so the setup that puts in place is it now puts the United States government in a position to basically be shooting against dollar weakness with record levels of stimulus, unprecedented levels of stimulus. I don't know if you saw this statistic. Goldman put this out in their research about 3 weeks ago. Hold on, let me make sure I get this. The disposable personal income in the United States in 2020, Goldman predicts to be 0.5% higher than in 2019. Higher. Basically flat. Let's call it flat. Disposable income flat year over year. How is that possible? That's possible because of the magnitude of the fiscal stimulus the United States is providing right now for people in these unprecedented times.
All right, guys, so you can see a lot of things he's saying is very true. So that was Travis Kling. Rest of the video I'll put in the link in the description. You guys can actually take a listen to it. But a lot of things he says is very true. A lot of the traditional markets are going to be failing, and they are. As well as if you do look at the Bitcoin price, yes, it did drop down 50 points. For a stable currency is not good, but if you look at the turnaround, it's drastically imaginable. It's insane. No currency has ever done that before, right? So if we do look on the emerging from lockdown, the Eurozone faces an economic collapse of historic proportions. So let's take a look on what they're trying to say. But this basically is the exact same thing as how the dollar is going, just because of how money that they're printing, as well as very, very big players in the market are getting out of that type of stuff into hard assets, right? Like land, Bitcoin, gold, stuff like that. So let's take a look. Barely a decade after the Euro era sovereign debt crisis threatened to blow up the currency zone, the pandemic has put Europe's south back in the eye of the storm. Italy, Spain, and Greece all face economic contractions of more than 9% this year alone. According to the European Commission, spending on rescue programs will bloat already stretched public finances, widening the gulf between the northern and southern countries and straining the bloc. The risk was underlined by the Commission Wednesday as it warned that the EU faces the deepest downturn in its history. The bloc's executive body was blunt: without some form of common rescue plan, distortions call into question the stability of the region. So, actually, let's read this real quick. Such divergence poses a threat to the signal market and the euro era, yet it can be mitigated through decisive joint European action, Economy and Financial Affairs Commissioner Pelio Gentiloni said in a statement. Right, so basically what they're saying is it's going to fail, right? There's no downturn or bounce back from this. Yes, there could be, because they could print more money and stuff, but there's no trust in no currency anymore. So it's crazy, but that's just how history works, right? Every currency, if you go back in the timeline of currencies, every currency does die. It does, somewhat soften. So, like, for example, pounds, British pound was the currency of the world, right? Same thing as gold. And then US dollar took over it. And now, right, what's going to take over the dollar? My guess is it's going to be Bitcoin for the hardest asset, but right, you have US Tether, USDT, as well as other crypto that are coming in as Libra as well. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Libra does become the US dollar, just because in the US as well as, right, Africa, China are going to be using that. Even now, right, if we take a look, China is not legal in crypto, but is legal for banks and financial institutions to deal in crypto. So there are and is a lot of proof on stable coins like Tether, USDT, is being used in China because the US dollar is a form of backed currency. But of course, like I said before, it is going to be dying down, right? For those who want to transfer money out of China, there are quite a few more regulatory hoops you'll need to jump through. Even if you pay all the necessary taxes, it's common for people to run into a roadblocks at a bank. Well, of course, because, you know, it's restricted state, a state of spying. So, yeah, guys, that's basically the whole outcome of what's going to be happening, what's going to be going on in the markets. Right, USDT forecast correction completing or crash coming soon. CoinRise call is critical. Right, it's not just euro; it's also the US dollar. It's also the pound. Like, it's basically every single currency in the world. Instead of Bitcoin and Libra, we'll see how that's going to turn out, as well as USDT. Right, so be careful how you're trading, guys. Right, for example, if we do take a look on the Euro USD, let's see how they're doing. Oh, spelled the USD wrong, which is fine though. All right, let's take a look. There we go. So as you can see, right, it's already fallen. And yes, there is a distribution phase on the daily and 4-hour chart. The 4-hour gives a better picture. Yes, right over here, right? It did hit its higher highs, but, right, we're just in this distribution phase. And in my opinion, I think it's going to fall. Who knows? It's bouncing off the 20 MA and the 50 MA right now. But I wouldn't see it passing, honestly, through here. Just because there's a big seller point right there, as well as right here, and here, and here, right? So there's a bunch of levels for the euro to break a bunch of supply zones, but who knows how far it will go. But no one could tell. We'll see what's going to happen from here. Hopefully you guys think this video was very educational as well as informing. If you guys did like the content, like, subscribe, as well as share the video. And we do have a group chat on Discord where every single trader, as well as just average to expert, is available to join. It's just a community. It's free. Every Friday to Monday, we wake up at 7 a.m., trade the markets on a London session, as well as every day we trade crypto and compare our charts, as well as talk about how the economy is going to work out. All right, guys. Like always, hopefully you guys enjoyed it and keep hodling.